Good morning and welcome to NASA headquarters. I'm NASA Press Secretary Jackie McGinnis, and thank you for joining us to announce who NASA will work with to develop a human landing system for the agency's Artemis V mission to the moon. NASA issued the solicitation for the lander, known as Appendix P, in September of 2022 as part of the ongoing development of advanced space exploration technologies, capabilities, and concepts. We're joined today by NASA Administrator Bill Nelson, Jim Free, Associate Administrator for the Exploration Systems Development Mission Directorate, Lisa Watson-Morgan, Program Manager for NASA's Human Landing System, and we'll also hear from a company representative before answering your questions. But first, I'll hand it over to Administrator Nelson.
Good morning, everybody. Just over 2 years ago, NASA announced that SpaceX would build a human landing system to deliver the first astronauts to the lunar surface. It's been a half-century since we were there. We held a robust competition for the first landing, and SpaceX is making good progress. We have big goals for our Artemis program. About a mission a year to the lunar surface for stays for our astronauts up to 30 days. And today's announcement is about maintaining that cadence. It's about maintaining our excellence as the world's top space program and to maintain that for generations to come. It's about maintaining collaboration with our industry partners who will enable generations of explorers and pioneers to live and work on other planets. So we're here today to make an exciting announcement about a second lander award. An additional, different lander will help ensure that we have the hardware necessary for a series of landings to carry out the science and technology development on the surface of the moon, and that what we do on the surface of the moon is in preparation for us to go to Mars. I've said it before, we want more competition. We want 2 landers, and that's better, and it means that you have reliability, you have backups. It benefits NASA, it benefits the American people. These are public-private partnerships. It's the new way that we go to the moon. It helps NASA share the risk, the technical risk, and the financial risk, the cost, to enable, at the end of the day, mission success. This new lander will be built and operated according to NASA's sustaining lunar lander requirements, which, needless to say, when you put astronauts in that environment, those requirements are vigorous. Those capabilities include docking with Gateway, the mini, some call lunar space station. It includes increased crew capacity. It includes transporting more cargo for science and exploration on the moon's surface. And so today, we, NASA, announced that Blue Origin and partners Lockheed Martin, Draper, Boeing, Astrobotic, and Honeybee Robotics will build a human landing system to deliver NASA astronauts to the lunar surface. For the Artemis V mission, NASA's SLS rocket will launch 4 astronauts to lunar orbit aboard Orion. They'll transfer to the Gateway before entering Blue Origin's Blue Moon lander for about a week-long trip to the South Pole. And there they will conduct science and exploration activities. Our partnership will only add to this golden age of human spaceflight. Our work with commercial and international partners is keeping people fixated on the stars. And if you doubt this international aspect, just look how we were received a month ago when we went to Ottawa, Canada, received by the Canadian government because the first foreign astronaut on Artemis II to the moon is a Canadian astronaut. They are eager to be our partner, and that is true across the globe. The historic Artemis I test flight 6 months ago was a huge success. In Houston last month, we saw firsthand the progress that Axiom Space is making on the spacesuits, and those are the ones that our astronauts will wear on the moon. SpaceX is working hard on their Starship and lander, which will deliver the first woman and the next man to the surface. I've asked, and I still ask, Jim Free every day how we are doing on the schedule for Artemis II, and he assures me that we are on track for the fall of 2024. And with today's announcement, we are making an additional investment in the infrastructure that will pave the way to land the first humans on Mars. It's an incredible moment in spaceflight history. It's been 61 years since President Kennedy's words reverberated through Rice Stadium and made their way into the history books. Now, we know the first part. Quote, "We go to the moon in this decade and do other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard." But he continued, "Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills, because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one in which we intend to win." Our shared ambitions now are no less lofty than when President Kennedy dared a generation of dreamers to journey to the moon. And so today, in this golden era of exploration, the Artemis generation, NASA chooses to return to the moon together with our commercial partners, with our international partners. And together, our work will pave the way for astronauts to one day venture to Mars. Jackie.
Thank you, Administrator. Before we go to our next speaker, I want to welcome some of our partners from Blue Origin to join us here in the auditorium. And next we'll hear from Jim Free.
Thank you, Jackie. Good morning, everybody. It's a great honor to join you here this morning and welcome our new teammate to this side of the Artemis program in Blue Origin and congratulate you on your award. As the administrator mentioned, this lander is targeted for Artemis V, which is really the intersection of our test flight and our long-term plans. But I'd like to kind of talk to you about the other missions and then talk a little bit more specific on 5. So the administrator talked about Artemis I, an incredible, flawless mission. I think we've used a lot of superlatives around it, and all of them well-earned. And the data that we have from that mission is informing our next one, which the crew being here in DC the past 2 days, I've only heard the stories of them. I haven't seen them, but the stories certainly have gotten around about an incredible crew that will fly in Artemis II, test out our ECLIS systems, fly around the moon, and really give us that confidence to fly crews on every mission thereafter. As the administrator also mentioned, Artemis III will have the SpaceX lander on it and the Axiom suits, critical developments for us returning humans to the moon, where we'll have those humans to explore that history that is the South Pole, 4.5 billion years of solar system history right there on the moon, and we'll use the crew's decision-making skills and dexterity to really get samples to bring back for our science mission director and partners to use and explore further. And I always told Thomas Zurbuchen, he opened that last sample last year of the Apollo program, I think to challenge us to get back there sooner. So the gauntlet has been laid down. On Artemis IV, that really critical test flight where we bring on the exploration upper stage, our co-manifested payload capability where we'll have our international partner, the European Space Agency and JAXA with the IHAB module, continuing to build our capability where we'll go to Gateway for the first time and use Gateway and the SpaceX lander built to the sustainable lander requirements to go down to the surface and bring the crew safely back home. And then finally, Artemis V, which we're talking about the lander for today, where we'll really get to that yearly cadence of missions. That's our goal, is to be at that yearly cadence with Artemis V. We'll take up the Esprit module in the co-manifested payload space with the crew, and that's again provided by the European Space Agency, so our international partners continue to grow there. We'll have the crew transfer from Orion to Gateway and then into the Blue Origin lander and go down to the surface. This lander, much like the SpaceX second lander, will have those sustainable lander requirements to allow our crews eventually to stay up to 30 days as we build up the infrastructure, which is all based on our Moon to Mars objectives long term. Our objectives we're trying to prove out at the moon to go on to Mars, and around which we built our recently released architecture. So I'd like to take a minute just to thank the NASA team that worked on this procurement for the past year plus. It's an incredible, daunting job. It's a lot of work, and I'd like to personally thank the folks from across the agency, led by the folks at Marshall, but folks across the agency that supported that. So I would like to thank our NASA team. With that, congratulations again to our Blue Origin partner that joins us on this side of the Artemis program. You know, for me, being part of the Artemis team is a great honor, but it comes with great responsibility. I hope that you share that honor today, and I look forward to you sharing that responsibility in the future. With that, let me turn it back over to Jackie.
Thanks, Jim. Now we'll hear from Lisa Watson-Morgan.
So thank you, Jim, and thank you, Administrator Nelson. It really is just the culmination of so many months. It's so exciting to be here. So much work, you know, with all of our cross-program entities with Orion and SLS and the ground system at KSC, Gateway, suits. It's really a pleasure to be here and to really see us take this next step. So today's announcement, it is an important and exciting next step for the Human Landing System program. And now we will have 2 providers, and providing that competition that the administrator talked about earlier. It also helps us with then a more diversified industrial base, and that will help us advance innovation in the future. And that's really part of the American dream. I'm grateful for the continued strong congressional and stakeholder support for the Human Landing System program. You know, it shows that they're with us, that we're all together as a nation as we approach our return to the moon. We are really excited today to be working with Blue Origin and all of their partners. We definitely have confidence in them and their approach. They have a very exciting architecture with a reusable Blue Origin lander and a Lockheed Martin Cis Lunar transporter, as well as lots of other contributions from their other partners. With 2 lander Pathfinder test flights scheduled in the next few years, I really look forward to working with them on how all that testing is going to help contribute to the overall development and our mission success. And our teams will soon perform a kickoff where we get together, we get to dig in deeper to all the details and the plan, and that will get us started on the execution of the Artemis V mission. And that's what we're all about. We're definitely about execution and getting started. Now, I also want to say the lander system and the programs, Artemis, and all of the efforts on Moon to Mars. What we are trying to do is build on the lessons of the past. And I do want to take a moment to say earlier this week at the Johnson Space Center, I was able to meet with Charlie Duke, a former Apollo astronaut. And we heard from his lips what it is like, the hurdles we have to overcome, some of the things maybe we didn't think through, and how all that will affect our implementation. And I'm telling you, that was such a gift. And with that knowledge and the experience base that we gained from listening to him and to others, we're building a stronger future that will help us be successful on the South Pole and in our sustaining efforts. So with that, I just want to say thank you, and I'm really excited to get started.
Thanks, Lisa. Next, we'll hear from John Caloris, Blue Origin's Vice President for Lunar Transportation, who will be overseeing lander development and is joining us virtually. John?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you again for this incredible opportunity. On behalf of Blue Origin and the national team, I want to thank NASA personally. We're very honored and humbled to be part of this incredible experience. We're looking forward to participating on Artemis V, and we're looking forward to working together. This national team has been working together for a number of years, and we're really maturing our efforts now, and we're very excited about the Appendix P effort. The Blue Origin Blue Moon Lunar Lander is configured in 2 configurations. The first configuration is a crew configuration that will be able to land 4 astronauts anywhere on the surface of the moon, day or night. That'll be the first mission that we fly as part of Artemis V. This vehicle also can be configured for a cargo landing mission able to carry up to 20 metric tons in a round trip reusable configuration, or 30 metric tons to surface to form the foundation of habitats and other permanent infrastructure. As part of the national team, we're very fortunate to have Lockheed Martin, who's building the Cis Lunar transporter. The Cis Lunar transporter will provide refueling services from low Earth orbit to NRHO and the parking orbit of where our lander is located. Along with the team is Draper, who will be doing GNC, navigation, and also our training and simulation. We've also brought new members to the national team, Astrobotic, who will be doing our cargo accommodations, Honeybee Robotics, who will be doing our cargo offloading capability, and Boeing, who will be doing our docking systems. So once again, thank you very much. We've been working very hard for this day, and we're looking forward to working together. And we want to also give thanks for the incredible effort during Appendix H, and how Appendix N and working together with NASA was able to get all the competitors together and ready for Appendix P. Thank you.
Thanks, John. So now it's time to answer your questions. We'll take both questions over the phones and here in the room. If you'd like to ask a question on the phone, just a reminder to please press *1 to get into the queue. First up, we have a question in the room from Joey Roulette with Reuters.
Thanks, and congrats to Blue Origin. What's the value of the contract, and how much money is Blue Origin putting into it?
John?
Certainly. So the total evaluated price will come out. I will say that Blue Origin, our endeavors to make human permanence on the moon is been part of our core beliefs for some time. So we want to establish permanence on the moon, and we want to ensure that we have consistent access to the moon. So with that in mind, Blue Origin itself is contributing over 50% of the total effort to get to not only this mission, but to ensure permanence.
Can you say how much the proposal was, or what you think the award might be, as far as value?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that question.
John, he's asking how much the award was for. And our team can, Jim, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, you'll see it in the documentation that's released, but the award was about $3.5 billion, a NASA award.
Thanks.
Thanks, Joey. Next up in the room, we have Jeff Faust with Space News.
Good morning. Wondering if anyone from NASA can say how many bids it received for this, and what about the Blue Origin proposal stood out that caused you to select it? Thank you.
We evaluated 2 proposals for the competition, and I would say the selection statement's going to come out here shortly. I encourage you to take a look at that for the specifics, Jeff.
Next, we'll take a question from the phones. We have Irene Klotz with Aviation Week.
Thanks. We can't hear any of the questions or the answers, by the way, so sorry if this is redundant, but could you say again the value of the award and what it covers as far as test flights? And also if there was how many proposals did NASA review for the HLS sustaining work? Thank you.
So I just want to check in with Brad, our operator, about the technical difficulties. I want to make sure our folks on the phone can hear. The value of the award was $3.4 billion, and John said they're contributing about more than 50%. Over 50%. Brad, just want to double check though. Sorry that our folks can hear us. Okay. Next, we'll take a question from the room. Michael Sheets with CNBC.
Thank you very much. I believe this question is best for NASA. Still on the contract value, I want to make sure I understand correctly, because previously Blue Origin had said that they would be willing to fund up to $3 billion themselves. So am I understanding correctly that this is effectively a $6 billion combined development effort? And secondarily, is the Artemis V mission still planned for 2029? Thank you.
So,
Yeah, so it is. We're still planning Artemis V for 2029, and the award was just over 3.4 billion, and I think it's Blue Origin's. They've given you the 50% number. They can be more specific on the total dollar value amount.
John, can you care to comment on that one?
Yeah, hey Mike. So that's correct. Blue Origin is contributing well north of $3.4 billion as part of this effort.
Thank you very much.
thanks. We'll take our next question from the phones. Eric Berger with Ars Technica.
Yeah, hi. Thank you very much for doing this, and congratulations on such a big day. I guess my question is about NASA's budget priorities. You know, we saw a great flight of the SLS rocket late last year, and so that's getting to be flight proven. And now kind of a long pull on these lunar landings is the actual landers, and it seems like your budget for lunar landers is about the same as the rocket over the next 5 years. And so I'm just wondering, you know, Administrator or Mr. Free, you know, do these budget priorities really reflect the urgency necessary in sort of getting to the lunar surface? Because, you know, the rocket's there, and then the lunar landers are still have a long way to go. Thank you.
You have a handheld.
Both the Congress and the Office of Management and Budget have been very generous with us in making sure that we have the landers and that we have 2 landers. That has not been an easy task, but I want to give the shout out to both of them. They recognize that that's what is needed. Now, if I understand your question, is that provided in our budget? The answer is yes. And I think the announcement here today, where the successful bidder is putting in over 50% more skin in the game than what the NASA contract, fixed price contract is quite significant. And it underscores the fact that this public-private partnership, that we go back to the moon, is in fact working. It's worked in the first instance, as I said at the outset of my remarks, with SpaceX. And they likewise put in a lot of skin in the game. And that mission for the first lander is proceeding on schedule. And likewise, in the announcement of this award today, you're seeing a similar situation that would clearly indicate the wisdom of this public-private partnership.
Thank you. Take our next question from here in the room.
Thank you. I'm Rokuda for Japanese National Newspaper Asahi Shimbun. I was wondering if you could provide the test schedule for Blue Moon. When and how do you plan to test it? Thank you.
You got your tricky question.
For John, would you mind elaborating on the testing schedule for the lander?
Sure. Thanks for the question. So working backwards, if you will, before the first crew landing occurs, we will be landing a exact copy of that lander prior to that, 1 year prior. So we'll be testing out full lander systems and the full architecture prior to any astronauts entering the vehicle. And that will be roughly 1 year prior. Before that, we have a number of test launches and landings that we'll be releasing here soon. But as Lisa made reference, we do have our Blue Moon Mark 1 landers that we are currently posting flight hardware for. You may have seen it on social media. And the team's very excited about working those to prove technologies for these future landers before crew members even step inside.
Thanks, John. We'll take our next question from the phones. We have Alicia Sowers from Mashable.
Hi, thank you. This is a question for Mr. Caloris. Hopefully I will be able to hear his answer. There have been 3 straight landing failures with the Berger sheet and the Chandrayaan and now iSpace missions. All previous private landers that I'm aware of have failed, and that's not a great track record. So what makes you confident that you can achieve this, especially when there are humans involved? Thank you.
Yes, thanks for the question. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you now. Thank you.
Oh, great. Okay, so as I made reference to, we will be actually landing a number of vehicles prior to crew actually landing on the moon utilizing our vehicles. So not only will we be testing the technologies in the lunar environment to ensure safety, but then those will migrate into these landers. We will also fly, as I mentioned, the complete version of the lunar lander in an uncrewed fashion 1 year prior to check out all systems. We'll then launch a new lander for crew members to go on board. I'd also like to mention that's one of the great things about the national team. Blue Origin has been working these landers for a number of years. Lockheed Martin brings extensive experience on landers as well as their work on Orion. Draper, Astrobotic, and Honeybee are fantastic partners, and they're part of CLPS Awards. Boeing as well, with their experience on ISS and what they bring to the team. It's kind of like a perfect blending of what we're trying to do of lessons learned so we don't repeat those lessons again.
Hey, and Jackie, can I add something to that, please? Yeah, and I also want to add that there's also the NASA Insight and the experience base that I mentioned in some of my earlier comments. And we're working towards human rating requirements. And, you know, as you saw from the Artemis I launch, we fully understand those. So working together collectively, we can bring the best from the government side and our years of experience with their experience, and we do believe it will be successful.
Thank you very much. We'll take our next question from the phones. We have Christopher Koiknos with Astronomy Magazine.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you. This is, I guess, a question for John, maybe getting a little more specific about the test schedule or sort of flow of tests. Is there the possibility, or are you planning for a crewed mission in Blue Moon that is Earth orbital, before you actually do the crewed landing on the moon?
Thanks for your question. It's a great question. The first time that crew members will enter the lander will be when it's docked to Gateway. The crew members will go to Gateway via Orion and then transfer to a lander for operations between NRHO and the lunar surface, and then back to Gateway.
Okay, thank you. So, so that will actually be the Artemis V mission. Will be the first time crew are in it.
That's correct. That's correct. And we have, as we mentioned, all these demonstration missions prior to that, leading up to that mission.
Great. Thanks. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you both. Our next question on the phone is from Micah Maidenberg with Wall Street Journal.
Hi there. Hey, John, sorry if I missed this earlier, just with some of the technical issues, but how will Blue and its partners get, you know, its landers out to the moon for the test missions and later to Gateway for Artemis V? Thanks.
Certainly. So we utilize our New Glenn launch vehicle for all of our components, both the lander to go to NRHO, as well as the cislunar transporter, and then follow-on refueling flights.
Thank you both. Our next question on the phones is from Alan Boyle with GeekWire.
Thank you. I had a couple of questions maybe to fill in some of the gaps in my understanding. I think it was mentioned that there would be a couple of Pathfinder flights, and so there's the one that happens a year before the crewed flight. And I think previously Blue Origin had talked about how this was perhaps going to land in the vicinity of where the crewed landing might take place, and it might be possible to send some cargo that could be used during the crewed mission. So that's one issue that I wanted to find out, is whether that was still the plan. And then are there other Pathfinder flights that would be flown before that uncrewed lunar landing, or are you referring perhaps to a SpaceX Pathfinder flight, for example? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Alan. So, this will come out as part of the award, but Blue Origin will be landing 2 landers prior to the Mark II lander that will demonstrate single string operations, avionics, BE-7, reaction control system, et cetera, to the right now South Pole of the Moon. Then after those 2 missions, we'll fly the first uncrewed mission as part of this award in Appendix P, and return that to NRHO. That goes, and that's worth noting, because right now that's above and beyond the Appendix P requirements of just landing. We actually are going to lift off and bring it back to NRHO, and then we'll launch a new lander that will then carry crew to the surface.
Thank you. Our next question on the phones is from Bill Harwood with CBS News.
Yeah, hi, thanks. John, can you give us any ballpark on the mass of the lander, the Mark II lander that's going to carry astronauts, just to give us a sense of that, and any dimensions you might have off the top of your head to ballpark it? And out of curiosity, what's going to happen to the unpowered lander, the full-up lander that you test before the astronauts come? Is that simply discarded, or is it in some way, can it be used again? Thanks.
Sure, great question, thanks. I'll work backwards. The first lander could be utilized again. We're right now using that as purely risk reduction so that our efforts are not dependent on that lander, but it could absolutely be utilized a second time. The lander is optimized for our 7-meter fairing of New Glenn. So we specifically optimized height and mass for New Glenn. And then mass will be part of the release when we get into that, because it depends, of course, on which mission and so forth. The important points, as you can see here in the graphic, because this is now a sustainable lander, the Appendix P requirements allowed us to look back at the original Appendix H and say, okay, if we want to emphasize robust, reliable, low-cost operations, how would we structure that lander? And it was an integrated lander. And as you can see here, it's an integrated lander that now allows crew access to the surface, not only rapid access to the surface, but then also scales for future efforts such as a lunar terrain vehicle or habitats, where perhaps those could dock directly to the lander crew module and not require an EVA to transfer from the vehicle to one of these permanently in place assets. So that's why we're proud of this lander. And as you can see, it's an integrated lander so that the entire system can be reused and then land again in a different location in the moon.
Thanks, John. Our next question on the phone comes from Leo Enright with Irish TV.
Thanks very much for doing this. I guess this is probably for the administrator. I was just wondering, you mentioned ACE4E, the European Space Agency's refueling communications module is going up on this flight. Do you envisage a European astronaut going on this mission? And do you envisage that European astronaut walking on the moon?
You're way ahead with that question. The Canadian astronaut is going on Artemis II. On Artemis III, which is the first landing of the 4 crew members, 2 will descend to the surface. We expect that will be the first woman and the next man to land on the moon. Now, obviously, that crew has not been selected. The crew that's been selected is the one that's in D.C. right now, by the way, to rave reviews as the crew of Artemis II, which will circle the moon. So when will foreign astronauts join on the actual landing? That's much further down the road. But likely it would not be on Artemis III on the first landing. That is expected. The first woman and the first man would both be Americans.
Thank you. Our next